Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarasto Andhakaro Vai Rukarasto Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravabhai Tejasvina Pravadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So today we will move on to the second part of this talk on Asakti, rather Anasakti, lack of Asakti, which means detachment. So this is based on a talk given by Swami Viditatmananda ji, as I mentioned last time, on the occasion of Sailorsburg 36th anniversary. That happened very recently. I thought it was a very well delivered talk. Swamiji, of course, is a very experienced teacher, very solid teacher, and a very solid person, not given to perhaps some of the theatrics and flair and so on and so forth, but his subject matter, his delivery and so on is right on the money. And if he chose this topic in front of this huge audience of relatively experienced students that have been going to the ashram for a while, I decided I wasn't able to listen to it fully. I was doing some other things. But then the more I listened to even parts of it, convinced me that this is a very good summary of his recommendations on how to lead a life for happiness. And I thought that I would kind of transcribe it for myself and teach it as part of the classes. So this is what I'm doing. So we did the first part last week, and most of that first part was in articulating what Asakti means, what attachment means, how to recognize it, what is the problem associated with it, how do we remove it if it's a problem, and then finally, what are the rewards of removing the attachment in our life. So we had done the first part, which is a problem articulation, and today the emphasis will be on the solution, as I had mentioned in the last class. So before I embark on that, I was just thinking to remind you of an important way of viewing our lives, which has, as various acharyas have pointed out in various ways, 5 basic parts to it. 5 basic parts. It's called Panchavritti. So vritti here means 5 thoughts, 5, even ways of looking at it if you want. So vritti means a formful thought. And so Panchavritti consists of 5 things, and those are, first 3 are Satyam Jnanam Anantam or Satchidananda, and what it means is that the entire universe is basically non-changing and timeless and fullness, this nature of fullness. And so Ekarasa, only a single strand which consists of 3 aspects to it, which is, it always is Satyam, it is the nature of knowledge, Jnanam, and it is also Anantam. It has no boundaries. So probably the best way to look at it is that if space had consciousness in it, which it doesn't, if it had consciousness on it, then, and also a sense of joy, a rasa, eka rasa. So then the Chidakasha would be like the nature of the universe. And that is the nature of the universe anyway. So Satyam Jnanam Anantam. This is what it is. It is, this is never began. You cannot say that it's a function of time. Time itself is part of the creation. And neither is it going to ever end. It doesn't need to end. It is the very nature of fullness. Fullness here means Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. It is always, it remains fullness, and it never, even if it appears not to be full, it is full. And very much like we have seen those examples too good, that even if the room space for the time being appears as limited, it is unlimited. It is always unlimited. So this is the first 3 of the 5 Panchavritti, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. And the next 2 are equally important. This is viewed from the standpoint of a human being, not necessarily any being, although you can extend that to other beings as well. But from the standpoint of a jiva like you and I, and what it says is there are 2 other factors in the Panchavritti, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Ajnanam and Jnanam. So what does that mean is that if one does not know that the nature of the universe is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahman Ityarthaha, it is really the nature of Brahman itself. If one does not know it, then there is dukkha in our life. Then there is some problems, lots of problems actually, and really sorrowful problems, serious problems. Serious problems. And so not just casual problems, deep-seated problems, if we don't know it. And then the 5th factor is that if we know it, it's all joy. Why? Because by knowing it, one quote unquote becomes it, which is never beginning, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, which is the ideal, which is the perfect world. So these are the 5 factors. So given that, the reason I'm mentioning it, because I'd like to tailor my talk today on the solutions of Anasakti. The reason I'm mentioning it is because it should also be looked upon based on this introduction of Panchavritti, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Ajnanam and Jnanam, that the whole Srishti, the whole creation is a puzzle to be solved. Puzzle to be solved. And one can even relate to the solution of the puzzle. So the first thing is that sometimes when we are, so if we are looking at jigsaw puzzle, the nature of the jigsaw puzzle is that it started by having a complete uncut picture. And so from there, depending upon the complexity of the puzzle, many pieces are cut. So what that means is that when we go in to solve a jigsaw puzzle, we know that it can be solved, right? And so there's a lot of possibly some frustration, some impatience. Well, how come I can't get it? This, that, or the other. But deep down below, you know that it's a matter of solution. It will all come together. In a more complicated three-dimensional puzzle of the world, there is a certain fine line between understanding is this a puzzle or not. Because it could be that it's an unsolvable puzzle. So that doubt can remain in one's mind. Even though we like to solve the equation of the world, so to speak, as Einstein and other great scientists all want to do. They want to really be able to represent the whole Srishti in terms of a very complex but an equation that can be derived from the understanding of the Srishti. I understand that that Einstein, for example, was still looking for that kind of a perfect equation. But they never could find it. Okay? So the point is that we don't know whether this solution, this puzzle is solvable or not. But suppose through the blessings of Ishvara, we meet all these Mahatmas through whose conduct and their personal lives and so on, they say, yep, this is a solvable puzzle. And through somehow with the Shraddha that we have, we develop a certain trust that this is a solvable puzzle. They haven't solved it yet, but there is a solvable puzzle. And another thing, this puzzle is given to us with some instructional hints. Instructional hints where the author of the puzzle is anxious that you solve it. And it gives you, this is what is called lingam. We have talked about this. The word lingam means hints. So the lingam, like Shiva lingam, Atma lingam, Dharma lingam, all those are lingams. These are really aids to find out how to solve the puzzle. That is also given. Okay? Okay. Now, if one understands that this is a solvable puzzle, then one embarks on it, and while doing it, it is really not easy to solve. And in fact, I would now give you another example where this puzzle becomes more immediate, more personal, more desperate to us. So imagine A puzzle that we are talking about is something that is lying on a table, and you've seen this, where recently we went to our son and daughter-in-laws. They had rented a house during the summer, and on a big table they had all these puzzles that they were in the process of solving, and the instructions were, don't touch it because it's an unsolved puzzle yesterday and we are still in the process of doing it. Don't juxtapose all the pieces. Don't do that. Just leave them as it is. So everybody understands that. So that table was never touched by anybody. If you wanted to have a cup of tea or some snacks or lunch or dinner, you use some other tables, but not that one. So so this is one thing that you can think about, is solving a puzzle which is outside of you. But let me give you another example which brings it a little closer to us. Suppose this puzzle is in the form of a maze, M-A-Z-E, that you enter. Sometimes I guess there are, if you go to all these, I don't know, Disneyland, I don't remember if Disneyland has it, but I think I remember going to some of these amusement parks where there are mazes that you enter. And it's a complex maze where you are trying to figure out how to get out of it. So this becomes more personal. I think our life is more like a maze than an outside puzzle. A maze is one that I am in it. So the life should be looked upon as a maze, which is like a way of saying it's a puzzle. I need to get out of this maze. And the more I'm unable to, the more desperate I get, the more disappointed I get, more worried, more anxious I get. Am I ever going to be able to get out of this place or not? And then there are, of course, even further complications where it's very possible that at the end of the life you are still moving around in the maze. That's exactly what's happening. And immediately you are taken birth in a new life and you're still in the same maze. So I think that should be your background vision as we discuss the solution for Asakti. Okay? All right. If that being the case, so let us briefly review what we did last week, and then let's go ahead further. So what we did last week was that, so a big part of the hints to solve this maze is viveka. So viveka, as you know very well, is a very special form of vichara. Vichara means a dedicated thinking. Subject matter is called vichara. So people can have a meeting and say, we need to discuss the effect of climate change. And so everybody there is really just talking about the causes of climate change, what can be done about it, what are the effects, what are the causes, what are the problems, solutions, all that. This is called vichara. So in this vichara, in the shastric hints given by our Vedic scientists, our Vedic Mahatmas, viveka is very important. So viveka means two things that are kind of mixed up and appear to be indistinguishable. But The viveka means to develop a kind of fine thinking where you can distinguish two things that look like they are all mixed up together, but they are different. So viveka sometimes, for example, comes with the specialization. My wife, for example, she's an interior designer and a very experienced one, and part of her design expertise is the choice of color in various things, whether it is furniture or cloth or fabric or curtains and so on. So she has a very good eye for this. And I don't. So sometimes I would say, Pami, this looks like it's yellow. And she says, this is not yellow. She smiles at me and he says, yeah, it looks like yellow to you, but it has some mustard mixed in with it. It is not pure yellow. It is mustardy yellow. And I can't tell the difference between it. It looks yellow to me. But in her eye, she has viveka between a pure yellow and a mustardy yellow. I'm just giving an example. Maybe there's some other things also. Same thing on blue and green. So anyway, all I'm saying is that is part of this methodology, part of the lingam, part of the hints to solve this maze is to develop the ability to do viveka. So there we already began last week that there are two things that appear indistinguishable. What are the two things? Think about it. Love and attachment. And unless we can distinguish between the two very clearly, we fall into describing the two as the same. As, for example, often we say, I love my daughter. I'm so attached to her. So now, just look at this. That means that in your view, you are thinking that both love and attachment is the same. And this is the lack of viveka is one of the issues that we have to confront. So there we have to distinguish with the help of the Shastra, with the help of the spiritual wisdom and so on, because it is not casual. This is something that's been going on for literally millions of years, that there is in fact a way to distinguish between love and attachment. It is important to do so by analyzing. So there vichara is, so the viveka is the goal, and the way to do that is to do vichara, because you have to look at how they are different. How can you say that they are different? What are the propensities of the two different things? All of those have to be discussed in your mind and be very clarified in your mind. Only then you can say, yes, they are two totally different. So anyway, we went through last week in understanding that there is a big difference between love and attachment, asakti. Summarizing, what was it that was said? It was said that love is natural to us, is highly desirable. It is actually part and parcel of Satyam Jnanam Anantam. It is just an expression of Satyam Jnanam Anantam. It is really based on myself. I don't have to import it. I don't have to learn it. It is just given to me in my life. But somehow in the conduct of our relationships with love, something else creeps in that surreptitiously muddies it up. And so in the beginning, as I mentioned to you, when you have a baby, like we do, we have she's going to be 18 months pretty soon. There's pure love. And there is zero expectations. If she cries in the middle of something, you don't say, why, what's wrong with, don't cry. Let her cry, because she has her own reason for crying. If she's happy, she's happy. We have unattached love for her. Whatever she does, if she pranks around doing this, that, or the other, and she calls me, Papa, her grandpa, and I just love it. It's pure love. But then, as we saw, as the child grows, some expectations also come in. Swami Dayananji once said that, I remember this example so well. He said it all depends upon the way you approach things. So he says, I remember that he said that supposing you have a 4-year-old son, and so this 4-year-old son just unexpectedly hits you in the leg with his leg, kicks you. And it hurts. It hurts. Swamiji said, do you know what the father would tell his wife? Oh my God, this guy is growing up so well. He's got such strength. He's rubbing his hurt and saying, he actually hurt me. This is one strong boy. I think he's going to be he should be playing American football. He's very happy about it. His own son. Why? Because you take into account the age and so on. Now Swamiji says that supposing instead of 4 years old, the son is 14 years of age. And it can almost like never happen, but suppose the son kicks his dad. My goodness, you cannot imagine what will happen. There could be a war at the home. How could you do this? What's wrong with you? Same action. But the expectations are that if you are 14, you are supposed to be, not be doing these kinds of things. I remember this example Swamiji had given. So therefore, going back to the viveka between love and attachment, so we summarized it by saying that we have a different way of transacting with our own loved ones. Forget about other people for the time being. Let's take the extreme case of just dealing with your own family for the time being. And within the family also, you have a certain set of expectations that come in. Okay, then the next thing that we saw, this is an important thing to see. This is where the crux of the issue is. So one of them is the distinction between love and attachment. The other one is what qualifies as attachment. So there we took the example. I'm revising all this, so forgive me if it is somewhat repetitive, and because I think this is important for us to do. And my own experience is that the repetition really is strengthens So if it takes, I was hoping to finish it in 2 classes. It may go over to the 3rd, I don't care. My own thing is to make sure that the subject matter is well treated. So there we saw that, so take the example of your son who's now considering college. And so the parents say, son, what are you thinking of? Where's your interest? Now that you have to apply for colleges, what are you thinking about? So the son says, I will tell you one real example. So my older son, when he was going to college, he had applied to a few. Nowadays, my God, getting into these colleges is so difficult. In that time, he had applied to many top colleges, and he was weighing 2 colleges. One was a private college, Cornell, which he had gotten accepted, and one was a public college, UC Berkeley, that also he had got accepted. He has got some other colleges also, but these 2 were the 2 finalists. So he went to visit both of them. And I still remember the time when he came in and he says, okay, I think I'm pretty much decided what I want to do. So we said, oh really? Sit down. We all, in this house itself, the next door, I remember we were all sitting down on a sofa. And he says, Dad, I have to tell you, I am not going to go to Cornell. Actually, in a way, it was kind of a relief because Cornell was very expensive these days also. And our savings were to be tested. So in a way, it was a relief that he won't spend that much money. But on the other hand, Cornell, he was going to Cornell in the engineering department. And he was going to go to Berkeley in the economics department. So he had not applied to the same ones on both of them. Or maybe they'd, just the acceptance. So I said, well, interesting, tell me why. So he says, Dad, what happened was that I was at Cornell for 2-3 days and they had me visit the laser lab and this lab and so on. And he said, it didn't do anything for me. Everybody else was going goo-goo gaga about it and touching the equipment and so on. And to me, it didn't do anything. And yet, his strength was in mathematics. So he said that I need to take quantitative courses. So he says, I have a feeling that I don't want to be an engineer like you were. I was not a real engineer. I was a software engineer, hardware design with IBM and so on, but not really a bridge builder or anything like, not a civil engineer. But he thought that my expectations would be that I would also go into engineering. So I said, Sanjay, no, I'm okay with that. Whatever you want to do, it's okay. And so he chose economics, and he's done very well for himself by choosing economics. He then joined Anderson Consulting and then Google and all those kinds of things. So now imagine there is a son who is going to college, and you say, oh, so what are you thinking of? And the person says, well, I like to go into ancient history, European history. Or I'm thinking I'm going to go into music. Now, just take that case. This isn't what you expected. All right? So now you can approach it in one of 2 ways. You can say, oh really? Have you considered the pros and cons of becoming a musical major? it's more fun and so on, but getting employment is a problem. You have to really raise a family, you have to have money and so on, and you'll have more difficulty. Have you considered that? So he says, yes, I think I've considered that, but maybe tell me more about it. So you present both cases to it. This is not attachment. This is an expression of love. So if you help the other person in fulfilling their destiny, that is love. So here Swami Vidyatmananda ji just laid it out on the ground. He says, listen, so this is a very key point. If you conduct your transactions of life in a way that you help the other person become fulfilled and happy, it is truly love. Truly love, no problems. This is absolutely good. And having considered all of the advice, the person may decide, yeah, this is what I want to do. Or if it doesn't work out, you'll say, we did the best we can and it was a wrong decision. So then people can choose another career. And then you just give them whatever support you can, emotional support, financial support, whatever it is, and life goes on. But look at the other way around. Suppose this is the key which is going to permeate through the rest of our analysis. This is the key. If you want your son or daughter to choose a line because it is good for you, it is attachment. Attachment meaning what? So let us look at what do we mean by keep on saying asakti, attachment. So in a way we should look upon it as we are kind of like a puppet. And we have various strings attached to us. Okay? Like a puppet does. So we are a real life puppet. And we have got all of these strings attached to us that do not allow me to become free. I am bound by all these strings that are tugging at me in various ways. And I want to be free, but I can't because I don't know how to be. I don't know how to cut these strings. And so an attachment means you look at someone else's happiness in your terms, not in their terms. This is the key to the solution. Because we saw that everybody wants to be a pleased self. No matter what anybody else does, ultimately it comes down to yourself. Am I pleased with myself or not? So this is, Swami Dayananda used to say, this is what is called Bhavasagar. Bhavasagar means an ocean of becoming. You want to just become a happy person and you struggle to become a happy person because you have all these conditions and you want to get rid of them but you don't know how to do it. But you are continuously trying to become happier and happier and happy, not really understanding how to become one. In relative terms, everybody knows to a certain degree how to be happy. So the key issue here is that if you allow love to become the hallmark of your life, you will be very happy. Why? Because that is the nature of yourself anyway. But you have a feeling that I want to really control the other person to my like. In this case, as we mentioned here, it is always the case where you feel, I don't want my son to become a musician, because what will my friends say? This is what happens. This sense of competition between friends never goes. First of all, you meet friends when you haven't had children and you're saying, what kind of a job do you have? How much money are you making? Where do you live? How kind of a house it is? Then it becomes, how many children do you have? You all compare. What schools do they go in? Private school or public school? Okay, then you go through all this whole thing. Then, as you grow older, do you know what the next thing is? How many grandchildren do you have? And how many daughter-in-laws and son-in-laws? And are they close to you? And people brag about it. Oh, my daughter-in-law just loves me. And another one says, oh, no, I haven't heard from her for a month. So this sense of competition comes in. And one of them is, which subject did your son choose? So you're kind of afraid of that talk when you go to your friend's circle, even some ones, and they'll say, oh, I understand your son is going to college, right? What's he doing? So you tell him he's going to be a musician. And say, oh, just a musician? Okay, all right. How about your son? He was just accepted at Harvard for their pre-law program. You feel, oh my God, what's wrong with me? What did I do not to bring up my kids properly? So you see, this is where your attachment becomes very palpable, because you feel bad not for the kid, but for yourself. So this is the crux of Asakti. And as we go further, this is the kernel. This is the key. And what is the key? Your sense of identification with what happens outside, or with what happens outside. And so you can now, this can be expanded. I took an advantage, not advantage, but I took an example of your own family. But you can now extend it to houses, money, jobs. And what that means is that to live in a better house, there's nothing wrong with that. That's beautiful. To live in a safe neighborhood, to get a car which is working well, all that is good. But if it is tied to your self-esteem, it is the kernel of the problem. So here Swami Viditatmanandji explains this. It is called self-gratification. And so self-gratification is not desirable because it is not easy. It doesn't last. It's not real. All those kinds of problems occur. But if it transforms itself into acceptance, into a relationship which is forgiving, which is based on your help and support and so on, then forget about the other people. You yourself will have a different view of yourself. So this is the, so far we haven't touched any new subject. What time is it? Oh my gosh, it's already 8:43. How am I going to finish everything? So this is where we ended last week. Okay? All right. Now what we're going to do is, this is the start. And so the first one is step 1. We're just going to go through 5 steps. Step 1 is the Asakti in relationships to other people. This is what we've been discussing so far. A attachment in the realm of relationships that keeps you bound in the maze. You're not able to get out. It's a dead end, meaning frustrations. For a while it seemed very hopeful. Yes, I think this path is leading me something, but no, it comes to an end. That is the first thing. Now we transition into, let me just give you all 5 of them. And whether we are able to finish this today, I don't know, but let me give you all 5. So the first one is Asakti in relationships. Then we transition to Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita takes a larger view. The relationships is only one aspect of it, a very important aspect of it. And our acharyas also say that really you cannot go through these other things that Bhagavad Gita talk about until you understand the problems you're creating in relationships to other people, especially your own loved ones. So this is the first one, Asakti in relationships. Then we transition into Bhagavad Gita now, because the canvas of the Gita is larger. It is more than relationships. So the first thing is Asakti to the results of actions. Attachment to the results of general actions in your life. More than just relationships here. We do a lot more, much more. Even though, as we said last week, the issues related to relationships is 80% of one's problems. But the rest of it also has to be considered, and in fact you cannot have complete solution until you enlarge it to include general actions and their results. So the second one is Asakti towards the results of the actions. Bhagavad Gita, we'll go into that in a minute. The third one is Asakti not just to the results of the actions, but the very actions themselves. You have an Asakti for action that needs to also be done through Viveka and has to be discarded. All of these things have to be discarded. So that was number 3. So number 2 was the results of the action. Number 3 is the actions themselves. The fourth one is the Asakti to yourself as you manifest in this life, which is as a body-mind complex. So each one of these steps becomes finer and finer. You cannot go to the finer steps until you have adequately covered the previous step, which is coarser than the next one. So this is why until you understand the problems of the Asakti in relationships, you could not appreciate the problems of Asakti for the results of all actions. So this is what is making the mind, we talk about Atma, Atma Buddhi, Atma, the Shuddhi of the Shuddhi of the Manaha, Antakarana Shuddhi. This is the Antakarana Shuddhi. Your mind has to be tuned and tuned and tuned and tuned and tuned so that you can get more subtler aspects of life. So that's the number 4. Asakti towards the body and the mind. Then we go to the final step, which is really not a step, which is the result, which is the rewards of Anasakti. And this is also very important because until we understand what the rewards are, we think that's a disadvantage. We think that Vairagya means I have to give up things, at least I have some pleasure. I'm watching movies in the afternoon and I watch news and I'm doing this. That also is taken away and so on. Nothing is taken away, but you have a feeling that it's being discarded. What else am I going to do? So it has to be understood that you should see the rewards of it. So that's the number 5. So this is what we're going to do today. Okay? All right, let's go to the I think we have already done enough for number 1. Let me see if there is something more that needs to be covered. Just a minute. Yeah, I think we have pretty much covered it. So let's go to number 2, step number 2, which is Asakti towards the results of the action. So here, very early on, Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So this is an important thing for the number 2. So that means your right, your responsibility, your relevance is for you to act as an independent doer and not be related to the enjoyer of the action. And so we've all discussed that, but in this context we'll review it very quickly. It does not mean that don't expect results for your actions. That doesn't mean at all. That's a very simple-minded way of looking at it. No way. How can anybody not do until you have a certain idea of this is how long it's going to be, this is what I'm going to do, etc. And these are the results that I want. I'm going to invest the money into bonds rather than stocks. And then in 5 years, it will turn into this much more. All of this is expecting the results and so on. But what it's saying, so that's not what it is. What it is that you should really put all your efforts into doing a good job. But the results of doing any job is far more complex than you think it is. It has so many factors that are brought into it. You have no idea. No idea. Particularly because there is also the adrishya phala. Adrishta phala, sorry, not adrishya, adrishta phala. So it has the subtle results that also have to be accrued from the previous karmas. All of that has to be considered. And the effect of so many other factors have to be considered by Ishvara. Who's the Ishvara is the Karma Phaladata. This is, I think Swami Dayananji had given this example. So he said there are two neighbors in a village. And one of the neighbors has just sown the seeds of paddy, rice. And he had spent so much money into watering because the paddy has to be done in a muddy water, and so he had done all of that, but he doesn't want any more rain. So he says, let's do the other example. Supposing you are putting your seeds into a dry land. Yeah, that's much better. And you expect rain to come because you do not have enough irrigation of your own. So you tell Ishvara, you do the yajna for several days and you expect, please have rain so that my seeds can be wetted and they will start. The next door neighbor's daughter is getting married. And he prays to the Ishvara, please, I don't have a tent outside, I'm not a rich person, it is all open, and this is my first daughter, and the whole village is going to be here. Please make sure that you don't rain. So now Ishvara is looking at two prayers. One is, please give me water. The other one says, please do not give me water. So, if you are Ishvara, what would you do? You will see their cases, what they have done in the past, and based on that you make a decision. Either no water or water. One of them is going to be disappointed. Okay? So there are so many factors to consider that you don't know it at all. And so for you to have an asakti towards the results of the action is going to give you problems. You have set your expectations that I am not going to be happy until I get this kind of a result. Why do it? Expect results, but if it doesn't happen, you say there must be some good reasons for doing it, and you accept it and you go on. It is exactly like your son decided to become a musician. You didn't expect that from him, but let him go on. Let him be what he wants to be, because we've already discussed it. You have given him the pros and cons, and despite that he thinks now he wants to be a musician. Fine, accept it. So the karma phala, the expectation of karma phala is like that. So here the asakti is foolish if it is attached to the results, because you don't know all the things that need to be considered before the results are given to you. It's not in your control. It's a vast open field that has to be considered. A lot of equations have to be churned in. And if somebody says that, wait a second, that person got it, but I didn't. Well, this is where the adrishta phala comes into the picture. What you're seeing is only the drishta phala, only the obvious result. But what about all the stored results? They're not there. So therefore, if it doesn't mean that you should not be happy if the results are good. Of course you should be. If the results are not good, of course you should be disappointed. But don't be pushed out of shape. And more than that, realize that you are valuing yourself So if it is success, it's success outside. If it's a non-success, it is outside. But to internalize it to yourself, meaning you are now loading it onto yourself because of your self-gratification. See, this is the important point. So the step by step would be benign to, be soft-hearted to the results. Accept it. Why? Because there is nothing wrong. It was well considered. Ishvara cannot make a mistake. Everything is well considered, and you learn from it and do a better job next time, and you go on with it. That's how it should be. So this is the number 2. So here's Swami Viditatmananji pointed out, again, unfortunately the view is, if the results are successful, I am successful. And if the results fail, then I am a failure. That is the Asakti. It doesn't mean that you don't recognize failure. It doesn't mean that you don't show your disappointment. Of course, it's very natural. But to then view yourself as being something, that there is something wrong, I don't seem to succeed, this is where there's no need to extend it to that degree. Because it is not true. Because our final goal is that you are okay the way you are. But until the intermediate steps are also analyzed and seen to be that way, you never get there. You cannot say, oh, I'm studying Vedanta, that I am all Purnam and this, that or the other, but I really dislike what's happening in my life. Has to be some consistency. It's not going to happen that way. You have to develop a sense of acceptance, understanding, analysis, viveka, that this is where the presence of Ishvara becomes very important. Otherwise you will say, where is Ishvara, where is Ishvara, I don't see them, I'm just nothing but problems with me and so on. If there are problems with me, then this is the way your life has evolved. And to turn it around, you need to now just say, sorry, I'll do better, and just go on, and it will get better. So this is the step number 2. Here, Swami Viditatmananda pointed out something very beautiful. He says, we talk about, what is the definition of a spiritual person? Let's think about it. What do you mean by spirituality? Well, spirituality means to see the order in one's life, how things are happening following a certain structure, a certain order, certain nature. Nothing is out of order. You don't force anything. You just see how things are happening, and you detach yourself from being the recipient of the actions up to a point, and just observe and analyze and think about yourself. That is what spirituality means. So the spirituality in everyday life, Swamiji has written a lot of books on, all the Swamis have done it, seeing Ishvara in your everyday life. What does that mean? Seeing Ishvara in everyday life. It just means that whatever is happening, you understand by bringing in the karma phala data into your life. You look at the reasonableness of it. And also another thing, here Bhagavad Gita also says that the way to have this yoga means the ability to be a spiritual life, is to develop samatvam in your life. We talked about this in the Tuesday night class, in the Saturday morning class also. So samatvam means, so siddhi asiddhayoho samo bhutva samatvam yogamuchyate. So samatvam means, and I think the Western way of looking at it is not to be pushed out of shape. I think it's a very beautiful expression. I've always liked it. So the pushed out of shape means that if there is a spring which can be pulled out up to a certain point, and when you release it goes back to its original form. But if you push it so far away that it never regains its old form, then it's called pushed out of shape. It leaves a permanent mark of being different than what it used to be before. And so samatvam means it's okay to have some changes and some disappointments and some triumphs and so on. But you go back to the pursuit of the spiritual nature of yourself and your atma and anatma. You don't allow that to disturb that equanimity. This is what it's also important. Okay, let's go to the next step. So this was step number 2, which is to avoid asakti towards the results of the action. Let's go to the next one, which is asakti towards the action itself, not just to the results of the action. So Bhagavad Gita also progresses it. If you read it, you will see that it progresses from first giving up the attachment to the results, and once you have you've understood it, somewhat mastered it up to a point, you appreciate it, and it becomes natural for you, then the next step is to now focus on the action itself, not just on the results of the action. Here, again, like we did before, pay attention to why you are doing a particular action. If you are doing an action because you expect some results from the action, this is called Sakama Karma. Kamaha saha vartate iti sakamaha. That means that it is associated with, it is mixed up with wanting results. So this is the issue. If you are doing karma because you expect, you see the distinction between results of the action and the action itself? In the step number 2 was, you've already done karma, but now you're focused on the results. Here, while doing the karma, You are trying to figure out, why am I doing this? The results come later. But the karma itself means that it could be for the result, because I want to feel good about myself. If you feel that I want to do this karma, not because I have some demands that are reasonable, I want to invest some money because I have some spare cash and I want to make sure that I invest it wisely. Fine, that's not it is. But if you perform a karma because you feel that after doing this, I will really gain something for myself and I will feel better for myself. This is called sakama karma. Give that up. Give up sakama karma. Do karma, but give up the sakama karma. And so, the giving up of sakama means Nishkama Karma. Nishkama Karma means a karma in which the kama has been given. Kama means desire, a goal, wanting something out of it, a sense of accomplishment out of it. Give that up. So here the question can be, of course, is that possible to do? Is that possible to do? How can I not desire any? Is it possible to do karma without any desire for accomplishment? Again, there is a difference. You see? Again, same viveka. Expecting some results from the karma is okay. It has to. You cannot perform a karma until you have a certain goal. I was reading, I don't know if you saw this or not, it was a very beautiful article in the Indian press, that there is a 15-year-old boy who has developed a app for the phone for the financially illiterate people in the villages. What he has developed, what he has found was that people really don't know how to manage their money, how to manage their savings. They don't have a budget. They don't have a way of really understanding what my expenses are, where my income is, how much money is left, and so on and so forth. So he has decided, what a beautiful thing he has done. 15-year-old boy. He's developed 5 different modules, and starting with this introduction, then income, then expenses, then budgeting, then saving. And he goes to from village to village and talking to people, and he's already talked to like, I think 7,500 people, and his goal is that, you know, he will cover 75,000 very soon. What a beautiful thing to do. So to have a goal for those actions, for saving and so on, that's very nice. But here it just means, from the Nishkama Karma means, that you do karma without wanting to feel good about yourself. Wanting to feel good about yourself should not be based on karma. It should be based on who you really are. What is your nature? You cannot investigate what your nature is if you're so attached is not the right word here. You are so involved in feeling good about yourself due to your actions outside that you never have a chance to really examine the true nature of who you are. We'll go over this in a very short order. But anyway, so this is what is called Nishkama Karma. So here the distinction is not that you give up karma, you continue to do karma, but you take out the karma out of it. So here Arjuna, of course, asked Sri Krishna, is that possible to do? And this is exactly the advice given to Arjuna is no. In fact, if you just give up karma, then you are creating more problems for yourself. Instead, consider this as your duty to do it, your station in life to do it. You are there because up to this point, because of your prarabdha karma, you are at this point supposed to do it. So in this war of Mahabharata, you find that you are in a situation where you are confronted with a violation of dharma. You're supposed to act. This is your duty. And so you have to do karma. And it is not as though you're going to feel good about yourself or anything else, nothing to do with it. But you just do the karma for the sake of doing karma. Similarly, if you are a householder and you have a family to support and so on, of course do karma. But the issue is that if you evaluate yourself based on the results of the karma or in the fact that you are a big karta, that is the issue. You don't need to do that. Give that part of it up. And so in our life, for example, the advice given by Swami Dayanand Ji is be a contributor, not a consumer. And so from that standpoint, if you are a sakama karmi, you are a consumer. Just look at it this way, very beautiful. If you are a sakama karma, doer, you are a consumer. If you are a nishkama karmin, if you are a doer without the results of the action, you are a contributor. And the whole world is connected with being connected with contributor and consumer. Vasudeva Kuntumbukam. Upacharya upacharaka. We mutually support each other. I do a contribution which helps others, and others do contribution which helps me. So it's you substitute rights by seva. If you do that, and ultimately you do that for the sake of the Vidhata, by the Sarvashaktiman, the very Ishvara, so very God itself, who is the creator of this whole thing. And he's put yourself in this situation. So this is the semi-final attachment, which is Nishkama Karma. So in other words, to finally, karma performed to be helped is attachment. Karma performing to help is detachment. So this is number 3. Now we come to the final attachment. And this is not possible for you to do until you've accustomed to understand the first 3. And here the attachment is to the karta. to the karta itself. There's a very beautiful saying in the Mahabharata. I was just reading it recently. He says, Dharmam adharmam ubhetyaja satya anritta ubhetyaja yat tyaktena tatyaja. Beautiful. I'm mixing up some of the syntax. He says, remove the asakti for either good or bad karma. Both of them. Bad karmas, of course, you have to give up. Even good karmas. So the good karmas means that you are collecting punya karma, which means that your body will continue. Because so that's not freedom. Punya karma also keeps you bound. So he says, dharmam cha adharmam satya cha nriten cha tyaja. We give them both up. And he says, yena tyajasi tat tyaja. By which you are giving it up, give that up. And you are giving it up by being the karta and the bhokta, which is really attached to the body-mind. You have to give that up also. Because you are neither a karta nor a bhokta, you are the very sakshi. This is the final asakti. And you cannot give up kartritvam and bhoktritvam, which is much finer to understand, which is the truth, but much finer to understand until the first, second, and the third are understood. So this is number 4. And I think I can now go to the last step and then be done with it. I think that we have pretty much completed it. So the last one is number 5, that the final one is, because if you keep on giving and so on, what is left? What is left is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Because now you have Jnanam, which is that I am the Brahman itself. I don't need to do, I am the very nature of, I am a Siddha Purushaha, natu Sadhya Purushaha. There is nothing to be achieved, I am what I am, which is, don't need anything else, I'm okay. This is the final one. So here the point is, now we can summarize it and say, what is the reward of Anasakti? Now we can say that. So because you cannot embark on something until the reward is very clear to you. The reward for complete Anasakti with all 5 of the steps is, I'm free of the maze. Until then you are still in the maze, in one form or the other, one life or the other. But once you understand that you are unconnected to the upadhis that make you limited, to understand that you are the total space, not the room space, the reward is enormous, unbelievable. So once one understands that, then the asakti of these various things become very relevant. Asakti towards relationships, because you are already free and you are bound yourself through your own ajnanam, through your own ignorance. To remove that ignorance, try doing the Anasakti in relationships. And from there you say the Anasakti not just in relationships but in any results of the action. And from there, any action. And from there, any anatma, including the karta bhokta, the jiva, the body mind, that also is not you. So look at the progression. Beautiful, I think. Anyway, I think we managed to complete it. We don't need another class, so this is their 2-class section on the Anasakti, and I want to thank Swami Viditatmananda for inspiring me to present the material in this form, and of course in a very abbreviated form, but a very structured form that helps us in going forward in a more detailed study in the forward. So with that, I close the class. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Very good. All right, so that having been completed, we will go back again to the pursuit of the 11th chapter of Panchadashi. So we will have that for next week. And all right, I don't see any questions per se, some nice comments, so thank you for that, and we will see you next week. Hari Om.